Hello beautiful bookish people, my name is Hannah and today we're doing a discussion video.
Whoa!
I know, I haven't done one before, so it's exciting. Today's question that I want to answer is, was Walt Disney inspired by Shakespeare? I guess my debate teacher would call it an informative or an argumentative essay, but that's a moot point. Here we go. There's no escaping Shakespeare. All the world is still his stage. Even if you don't know Shakespeare, you know the famous balcony scene. You know Hamlet's famous suicidal lines, to be or not to be. His scenes, his lines, his tropes are injected into everything. But today I want to talk about Shakespeare's influence on one of the most well-known corporations, Disney. Now, I could point out similarities all day. From the female spends most of the story disguised as a male, forbidden love, hate to love trope, character gets turned into a donkey. I was quite proud of that one. Or the main character is a hunchback. But today I want to talk about the common tropes and storytelling techniques that both Disney and Shakespeare use. And one of the discussion points that I want to bring up was Walt Disney more inspired by Shakespeare than the original fairy tales? I don't know, but I've gathered evidence and I'm excited to share y'all. The first one being Sleeping Beauty or A Winter's Tale. So the original Sleeping Beauty isn't exactly a fairy tale. It's actually considered to be one of the first horror novels. The original story is about a young princess who's found not by a prince, but by a married king who actually rapes her. And the married king has a cold-hearted wife who we're supposed to hate, but I actually find her really interesting. But because the king has found this new love interest, he can't stop thinking about this young princess that he just raped. While the king is gone, the princess gives birth while asleep, which is honestly goals, until one of the babies sucks her finger that compels her to wake up and discover, oh, I'm a mother now. Whoa. The king comes back and tells her he's going to find a place for her in the castle. But before he can do that, he has to get the queen out first. So the queen finds out about the stories and demands the babies so that she can cook them and feed them to the queen. Yay. But before that happens, the cook, which is honestly one of the best characters in this story, tells the king of the queen's plans, and they escape and live happily ever after as much as they can. So it doesn't really sound like the Disney version, does it? So what does this have to do with Shakespeare? Well, I think Shakespeare had a lot of influence on the way that Walt Disney tells his stories.
Whew, that was hard for me to get out.
So I'm going to tell you a lot of similarities between A Winter's Tale and the movie adaptation of Walt Disney did of Sleeping Beauty. In both, a young princess is brought up to think that she's a shepherdess. In both, a young prince falls in love with a woman because of her beautiful singing voice. In both, the two love interests would have already been married. In both, the prince is forbidden to see her again. And in both, they get married. Now, there's no dragon in Winter's Tale, but there is a bear. And if that wasn't convincing enough, Florizel, which is the name that the prince calls his love interest, Flora, and Flora is actually the name of one of Sleeping Beauty's fairy helper, those people. As I want to say, as a little homage to the original source material. Now, this is really just speculation. I couldn't find any evidence that Walt Disney was inspired by Shakespeare, but I think it's pretty good. Moving on to the next case. The Lion King and Hamlet. I mean, you knew this was going to happen. Probably one of the most recognizable Shakespeare adaptations that involves Disney is The Lion King, because it's practically Hamlet in its plot, themes, and of course characters. In both, an angry uncle kills the main protagonist's dad. Both, the prince runs away and questions life. In both, the protagonist's dad appears in ghost form. In both, the protagonist seeks to not only avenge his father, but take back his land. In The Lion King, it's considered the circle of life, but in Hamlet, it's considered the circle of death. Ooh. But clearly one just has a happier ending. Moving on to tropes that are similar of Shakespeare plays and Disney movies. The dream trope, a twist where it is revealed from previous events in the story were just a part of a character's dreams, hallucinations, or some other escape from reality. Often put at the end to reveal the entirety of the story was some sort of dream. Shakespeare used this in Midsummer Night's Dream. At the end of his play, Puck comes out, "If we shadows have offended, think but this and all is mended, that we were just shadows while these visions did appear," which is basically a fancy way of saying if you didn't like it, imagine it was a dream and pretend it didn't happen. Which is very similar to the ending of Alice in Wonderland. I also think it's interesting to note that the Disney version of Peter Pan somewhat alludes to it, but the book doesn't. In the Disney version, they both allude to it might have all just been a dream for Alice or Wendy. The dream trope hasn't just affected Disney, of course. It's in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Inception, Labyrinth, The Matrix, The Shining, and of course, Wizard of Oz. And even in TV shows like Community. Honestly, I hate the dream trope. It feels like lazy writing to me. In an effort to surprise the audience from questioning what they just watched, to me it lessens the impact and any meaning that your story had. In my opinion, it's like the worst twist ending and the fastest way to get your audience mad and demand a refund. But that could be just me. Moving right along is the beta couple. The beta couple is represented in the backdrop of a romantic comedies, dramas, with the hero of the story looking at wooing their love interest, with support from their best friend to make it easier. The beta couple is always a secondary pairing, the hero and his wingman, essentially. A good Shakespeare example of this is Much Ado About Nothing, where Claudio and Hero help our main protagonists, Benedict, woo his love of Beatrice. A good Disney parallel of this is actually WALL-E. WALL-E and Eve are robots, but whereas John and Mary are humans who have an upbringing of impersonal, communist dystopian has robbed them of their humanity. Alright, my last one, and probably the one that inspired this the most, because I was in a hotel and I watched The Parent Trap and I noticed it was very similar to a common Shakespeare play. I had to pat myself on the back for being an English major. The Comedy of Errors and A Parent Trap. Identical twins show up more frequently in fiction than fraternal, non-identical twins. Twins are the name of the game, and this time with separated parents, in both A Comedy of Errors and A Parent Trap. In both the play and the movie, each character switches identities. The Comedy of Errors throws its characters into these situations without their knowledge, versus The Parent Trap, the twins are very aware of what they're doing. The twin trope is highly popular throughout movies, plays, and comedies, as shown in the popularity of both. The Comedy of Errors and The Parent Trap reunite the parents and also fix a love triangle. To answer the question from the beginning, I can't technically tell you that Walt Disney was inspired by Shakespeare, but here are just a few examples to show you that Shakespeare might not be as far out of reach as you think. So, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Keep reading and all that jazz. Why is it I want to burp when I get on camera? Ooh, Rhiannon from Crescent Moon Reads uploaded a rant. Let's watch it. Honestly, iconic intro.
Let's go, girls.
My been gosh dang it. Reunite blah. Oh no. Man, I didn't even think of how I wanted to end this. You didn't script this, Hannah. Gosh dang it, what are you gonna do?